Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here. I'm back at Atlanta BrickCon and I'm joined by Stefan, and we're taking a look at a new and updated version of New Hashima City. So if you want to give us an update on kind of what's going on with the story this year.
Sure, yeah. So this year we're calling our New Hashima adjacent build Neo Terminus. So the big updated things that we have this year are, if you've noticed, and the viewers will notice, we've changed all the tile to green. So we have placed 70,000 one-by-one trans green tiles. We're really trying, so you all know, right? We have been doing New Hashima style builds for quite a long time now. I think our first interview was in like 2019, if I'm recalling correctly. And it had been a long time since we sort of stepped back and like looked at the standards that I had been developing over the last 6 years, and we decided to like rewrite the standards, and we wanted to lean further into the like dystopian, like gritty really capture that gritty cyberpunk feel for our build. So some things like updating the water tile, for example, was something that was important to us, and really looking at the standards, really emphasizing like constructive criticism with our collaborators, and really capturing the vision that was always true and something we were striving for with New Hashima, but like get like a renewed emphasis on that for this display. So Neo Terminus, the word is cyberpunk, gritty, dystopia, like quality over quantity, which is something that we wanted to emphasize in New Hashima from the very beginning, but we were like really pressing for this build. So hopefully the viewers will appreciate that and see that throughout the display we have today.
Yeah. So is there a particular section you want to talk about, or we're going to move through the builders here?
We're going to start here with 08, which the layout is, has remained the same since the 2020 build that we did in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm, of course, from Birmingham, Alabama, right? And that's where the first interviews we did were. But we have a lot of new collaborators who've come in, and really we're committed to that aesthetic, that renewed standards that we put together and I mentioned. And we're going to have some of the builders come in and talk about their individual builds, and talk about what their vision was and how they contributed to the overall goal of the community. Firstly, we have Mikey, who's going to come in and talk about his new topper section right here. So to kick off the 08 section, we're going to have Mikey come in and talk.
Okay.
All right. Hey, how you doing? Mikey. Yeah, so this is my new topper. I built a cube in the past and wanted to step it up to the topper level, and really liked the medium nougat. And so kind of used that as my color palette. Had a couple ideas I wanted to do with the topper itself, and one of them was kind of a little red light district down there in the bottom left corner, and it kind of had the geisha girl gang kind of idea, so that's another little tidbit there. But it's not my usual sort of build style, but it's nice to get in here and try to mix it up a little bit. And of course, it's a great group of builders and can learn a lot from them. So, and really enjoyed it.
How did you plan out kind of the style of the building, where you've got those lighted sections, but then of course the larger nougat sections that kind of stick out? So you kind of alternate those, it looks like, a little bit? Yeah,
so I basically built one of the apartment sections there. And I knew I kind of wanted like a big panel of light, like off of one side with signs hanging off of it. So I kind of modeled one of those, kind of figured out what I needed, and then just, ordered the parts and started putting them together, and it came together pretty quick. It breaks up into 2 different levels for transport, but, 3 if you take off the top. So, but yeah.
And then you've got the various kind of, it's always fun to look at the precarious structures on top of the buildings here throughout this.
Yeah, precarious is probably a really good word for that one. I wouldn't lean on it really too hard, but so that was a thing Stefan actually did on the Discord we had running, was a sign competition. So added more signage to the build as a whole. So. And I think it works, trying to work on, like, I know Stefan probably mentioned quality over the quantity there. So,
yeah, well, excellent work here. Thank you so much.
And I think we got Noah stepping in here for his builds, his cubes here. So,
perfect.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Noah. I'm constantly bricked on Instagram. I have this kind of middle floor block here, and I spent this show kind of focusing on the more mundane businesses of New Hashima Neo Terminus. I have some little tea shops and storage units, and As kind of Stefan reiterated, like we really focused on rewriting our standards and picking out those gritty kind of heightened realism elements. We wanted to go for stuff that showed the wear and the natural, like lived in kind of state of the city, because I think what draws the eye and gives that naturalist feeling is that slow gradation of color and the kind of multicultural look of a lot of the streets with all the signage in different languages and things. So I think this smaller layout and the tightened scope of only having 10 of us this time around really let us focus on like what it is that makes the new Hashima look so unique. And I think we really honed in on that in a way that, you know, to me has been very successful and very meaningful. And I think particularly because we've been running it for a while and we're looking at, you know, suspending the project for some time, setting this as like a new benchmark and dialing in on exactly what we're looking for, I think went very well. And I'm very happy with the new walkways and the new water and everything. I think we have a lot to look forward to and a lot to think about for future iterations.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent work here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jordan Quackenbush, Lucky Duck Bricks. So my contribution is relatively small. I have this cube here, and this is where I had last year, and like Noah was talking about a minute ago, changing the standards and such. So from last year, like this whole column was this real chunky medium azure color, and just kind of making everything feel more refined to the Blade Runner, kind of a Cure vibe, less so the Cyberpunk 2077, so slimming that down, taking the design feedback that they were giving. When I designed my cube, I'd seen a lot of the ones around were like more solid wall facing kind of things that, you know, they'd have insets and whatever, but I wanted something that was more open air. I loved the Cyberpunk 2077 markets that they'd have, with lots of like little vendors and shops and such. So being able to have something that's open air, but still, you know, having the wiring capability to go up to the next part. And then I really wanted to play with Arduino and be able to throw in some kind of an LCD screen into that. So that was fun putting that in and learning Arduino. Now it's like basically stuck in there, and I don't want to touch it again and try to modify it. But I'm just really trying to fit that vibe of like a little street market feel and just give that flavor.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you got like the flashing orange cones on this side, and so many
cool.
great details.
I think that's the only walkway that has wiring built into it, so that was fun. And the new walkway standard, like Noah was talking about, you know, this was the old standard from years past, but now we have the ones that are they're still the 16 or 32 studs, but they all have like 5 plates roughly of being able to do whatever you want with them. And so, yeah, flashing orange cones for my little hazard area. It's fun to be able to toss in and implement. I love Brick Stuff is where we do all of our, not all, there's lights from all over, but Brick Stuff is where I got all of my lights. And so the flashing ones, these will flicker from time to time. There's the Chinese lanterns have a flickering one. There's a hot dog vendor on the other side that's like a grill. So it's a lot of fun being able to put in some life and activity into it without even necessarily having to have a motor moving something.
Mm-hmm. Excellent work. Thank you so much.
I'm going to pitch off to John.
Okay.
Hello, I'm John. I go by Brick City Planner, and I did a apartment building. So it's a three-story apartment building, and the lore of it was it was an existing apartment building. It's seen better days, but then another developer came in and wanted to build a coffee shop as well. So there wasn't really any room on the main level for the coffee shop, so they had to kind of like build up and just kind of expanding outside of the footprint, and I kind of wanted to do that just to add more depth and interest to the build. And so there's also a balcony at the top of the apartment building too, also just trying to change the shape and just add more interest to it. And try to just add more details like some pipes and wires, lights. And another thing was like I wanted to add the billboards too. So it's coffee is the main image, was writing on it, and then synth brew, just like it's not your typical coffee because I don't really have access to coffee beans as much in this environment. And there's also on the other side a more vertical display of the coffee sign as well for synth brew. But that's about it.
Yeah, I think the signage does really stand out there, and it's just throughout the whole layout, the signage is something that really pops.
Yeah, thank you. And next, Katie will talk about her builds.
Okay, perfect. Got our next builder in here.
Hey, my name is Katie. I worked on that cube, I call it the Okocho cube. I date Noah, who's constantly bricked. Talked earlier. And I had sort of been around the setup and teardown process and worked on kind of giving him critique and everything. So I decided I'd finally jump in. And I wanted to do something a little different, so I really wanted something with a bunch of like negative space and interesting sight lines, so I wanted something you could see all the way through. That was kind of my like main goal in the build. And I also wanted to demonstrate just kind of like how precious the space was. So this is actually the back of the cube, but there's like a bunch of little shops sort of along the length of it, and yeah.
What are some of your favorite parts or elements you were able to kind of include in your section here?
Yeah, so I don't actually know what they're called because I'm really not great at part catalogs, but the yellow arch was sort of like the inspiration for the whole build. I just thought it had some cool angles and would make a good like structural element, and I hadn't seen it used before, so that's kind of like maybe my favorite in there. And my least favorite is the old space seat that's also yellow that sort of like goes across from it because I can't find my second and third one, so that's my least favorite. And I didn't realize that was going to be such a hard piece to find because I designed it in studio, and since I don't have extensive knowledge of the catalog, I was just really surprised when I got to trying to source that part.
Well, I think it all turned out great, so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, I'm I'm Blake Foster. I mostly build starfighters nowadays, but I came out of retirement on building big to contribute the Hashima Corp tower. I started that right after Brickworld Chicago, the big show in 2023. I actually really wanted to build a topper for New Hashima, but looking at the time I had available, I didn't think I was going to finish one. And it took me a year and a half, so I really wouldn't have finished it. I've built big before. I've built bigger than that, but this is the build that almost broke me because it's just, when I say I took a year and a half, I took a year and a half working more on this than I work on my full-time job. And I wasn't slacking at work either. I would spend 20 hours in a Saturday building. And it really comes down to the parts density. There's texture everywhere. The windowsills in particular, I thought it was a good idea on the first floor to just give a 2-plate offset all the way around the corners, which just it makes the geometry kind of nuts. And then I had to replicate that on every floor. So it would take me 2 weeks just to finish one floor. And I don't know the parts count. I can say that I made a digital model of just the front facade, and that alone, I think it had maybe close to 1,000 parts. We're probably talking 5,000 parts per floor in that thing. And it's really all the texture. For example, the wall panels, those are 2 studs thick, and that's just to support the offsets and other things. There are tiles kind of wedged in there. And those things there's no connection between them. So if I didn't have another layer behind them, it would be like a tower of wooden blocks. It would just fall right over. So now the walls are 3 studs thick, and it's taller than I am. And I'm not huge, but it's
still very impressive.
Yeah. When it's on my building table, the tip of the antenna is an inch from the ceiling. So yeah, it was intense, but I really, really wanted to finish it. I would have felt bad if I didn't finish it, so I pushed on. Shout out to my wife for being incredibly patient while all this was going on. And
that's very impressive. And I think you actually have some movement, right? If we kind of look at the other side.
Yeah, if we come around here, it's probably my favorite detail of this whole build. It's got a working elevator. I think it's down at the bottom of the shaft right now, so I wait a second for it to start moving. I feel like this is kind of my revenge for my broken whirling dervish in Medina al-Mashara, because it's been running nonstop. I turned it off at night, but aside from that, it's just been running for this whole convention. I've not had to get in there and adjust anything. And I mean, that was something that I believed to be impossible. I was sure that I was going to be climbing up there. I mean, I even went so far as to put a kind of a fail-safe in there where if it stalls, right, like if it detects that a car hasn't hit the bottom of a shaft for like a minute or something, it'll shut down, because I didn't want it to be shredding gears. But it's not even been necessary. It's just been going and going and going.
What is the mechanism that makes that run? How does that work?
So the gearbox is all Lego. It's a Lego motor as well. Gearbox is near indestructible, actually, because I built the original one had a different gear ratio, so they moved a bit faster. And I took the old one apart. It took me like an hour to figure out how to get it apart. I mean, it was just like everything's locked into something else. It was a puzzle. And so that is just incredibly sturdy. And I mean, I'm sure that I'll find like, piles of plastic powder in there when I take this thing down. But it's held up. It's kept running. And then the car itself is just roller coaster wheels running on roller coaster track. And I mean, my thoughts on that were just that if I wanted it to be that robust, like I should probably use the parts that were purpose built to do that exact thing. Because I'm not going to be able to brick build something that's more reliable than the molded plastic parts. And it's held up. I mean, I'm really surprised.
No, I'm very happy. Yeah, moving parts can always be super tricky, so I'm glad to hear it's been successful.
Yeah, I mean, I was honestly like, I wasn't sure if I was even going to be able to access this thing. So I was sure that like, yeah, it would run for an hour and then it would break and that would be it and it would be over. But yeah, it's been going. I'm fingers crossed that it keeps going for the whole convention.
The whole building is really incredible, so thank you so much for all your work on it here.
Thank you.
And up next.
Right, yeah. So we've almost made our way all the way around Sector 8. Shout out to Blake, who came from Brooklyn with his tower. Fabulous. I mean, I think one of, there's a lot of great builders you've seen who've contributed to New Hashima and a lot of really great works. I think the work that Blake has done on the tower is just fabulous. So I want to make sure I said that, Blake. It's awesome. Anyway, we're going to finish off our way here before we pass on to the other sectors we have. My newest build here, well, we have the corner build that we've seen before with the stairs all the way up. I really like to emphasize like the minifigs realistically being able to like visit all of the layers of the city. So I have this thing where I try to incorporate stairs into my build. So if you were a minifig scale, you could visit all the areas of New Hashima. So we have that on the side of this tan building here, which we've seen before. But my newest build is this pink corner building here. We have a couple new billboards I built to add some like visual interest to the front in this like interesting curved shape that I've captured. There's a photographer and I believe journalist, Michael Wolf, who has a collection on his website of these Hong Kong corner houses. And I dug through there. There's one in particular that is this pink color that I was like very much inspired by to build this. I really like to lean into that aesthetic of these like old apartment buildings you might run into on the streets of Hong Kong if you were walking around there. So this is my newest build. It also has stairs running up the whole length of it. So if you're a minifig, you could visit every floor. These billboards that I've built, the one on the left says Fluid Neon, and the one on the right is Origami Trick, which is a reference to the book by William Gibson, Neuromancer. It's how he describes the Matrix, the first time Case in that book's visits to Matrix. He describes it as fluid neon origami trick. So that's a little shout out to Neuromancer, the Cyberpunk book, and probably one of the most famous works of like cyberpunk literature, the most famous one, I think is fair to say. So I wanted to have a little Easter egg in there to some of the inspiration for New Hashima and the things that we reach out to. So if you have not read Neuromancer by William Gibson, go buy that right now. A short read and you will not regret it.
Real quick, how difficult is that? Is that kind of rounding technique there? What does that take to achieve that?
So it's flex tube bent with bar clips inserted into 1x2 rounded plate with like holes that the tile is affixed to. It's a little hard to describe, but it's actually not difficult once you figure it out. There's a gold tower on the other side that the first building that I used the technique on, and I do lose tiles a few in transporting it. It's a little bit of a finicky connection, but that flex tube and clip combined to achieve this. It's actually really sturdy. I surprised myself. The build comes apart in like 3 sections to transport. That's a question we get a lot during the conventions, is like, how do you transport it? Because it seems like looking at it, it would be impossible to transport, right, and without gluing the whole thing. But most of the buildings, and the Pink Corner Tower here included, separate into like purposeful modules so you can like pack them away and reassemble them for the show. It does take quite a lot of time to set up a new Hashima style display. We spent 20 hours setting it up for this show. It'll be probably about 4 hours to tear down, but that like modularity is the only reason we really can set it up in time for a show. So yeah, there you go.
Sounds good.
The next cool building, y'all seen it before, is the Storybook Tower. It's a ode to maybe like Judge Dredd, where they have these like mega buildings. They're these like huge apartment buildings. They're almost like cities within cities, where to deal with overpopulation, you would have these huge structures. And again, Judge Dredd is probably the most like classic example of that being included in Cyberpunk media. And so I built the '08 mega buildings to sort of represent that. And the panels are actually these Disney Princess storybook covers. It was a good way to build something like really big, like with a limited number of parts. And they had this really nice detailing. They could maybe be like prefabricated panels to put on. So that's part of like New Hashima. It's something that, and the next builder you're going to talk to is very good at it. It's finding like odd parts and finding like a interesting way to use an odd part. And I think that's a good example of that right there. Anyway, I think we've made it all the way around. A quick shout out to Masao Hidaka and his monorail system that we've got running around the city. I always love incorporating that, and I thank him for always posting good tutorials and videos on there that we've incorporated. So shout out to Masao Hidaka and his monorail system he pioneered. We love having it on the display. Lots of fun to work with, and really the crowds at the shows always love seeing it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pass you off to Nate, who built the other side of the highway and the other side of the highway here. Nate has been building for a number of years. He was part of the Brolug collab from 2013, who, without that collab, New Hashima simply wouldn't exist. So we're always happy to have Nate out to the show with his builds, and he's been working a lot on some new stuff, and always happy to have it. I'm going to pass it off to him to talk about it, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nate, known online as Shoopluliumus, and I've been in the AFOL community for a good long time, and have been part of New Hashima for a couple years now, but the stuff I built for it does, like as Stefan said, go back quite a long ways. Some of what's still in my model today was started in 2012 for the Brolug Cyberpunk collaboration at Brickworld 2013. So
much like the city here, there's kind of layers to these builds and like over a decade's worth of progress.
There is. Me and another builder at that show had shared halves of an island, basically, and he knew he wasn't going to keep his part together, so I always said, well, I'll have to build the other half myself. So I put all my buildings away and was kind of starting to think about doing that finally when I heard from Stefan, and he was looking for people who'd been involved in that to get involved in his New Hashima. So I said yes, obviously, because being a part of a collab like this is an honor and really exciting.
So take us through kind of the main buildings that you've got in here.
So the old buildings are the ones on the far end here, the salmon building, the dark green and gray building on the other side, and this sand green and very light gray tower closer to the camera right now. Those are the original buildings that go back to 2012. And I like to find weird colors I can use, weird pieces I can use. To me, it helps it look less like Lego and more just like what I want it to be, a city.
What are those elements here on the side of this building?
So all of that is our Scala parts in light salmon. Scala is basically a whole separate system that Lego devised for making doll houses, essentially in the 90s, for larger scale dolls. So they invented these different wall panels and different stud connections than normal Lego has. And they also had parts in colors that were really not ever used for anything else. So I wanted to see what I could do with those parts and those colors, just because you get these interesting muted pinks and turquoises that you don't really get anywhere else in Lego.
Absolutely. It doesn't look like a Lego color at first, for sure.
that was the goal. The same with using things like the NXT very light bluish gray panels. They just kind of look a little different than what you're used to seeing something in Lego look. Yeah, it's a unique color that I wish they'd used more in things, because I think it's a nice subtle color, something lighter than light gray.
And then how about these buildings on the other side?
So then the other half of it was basically started in 2021 through 2024, trying to keep with the same sort of design principles as I used back then, but hopefully be able to do a little bit better job with everything I've learned building for a lot of years, and just all the new and exciting pieces and colors that have come around. So it's kind of a mixture of the old and the new. I've got some very old elements, especially on this yellow corner building here. That's a mixture of Modulex bricks, which were like another whole separate system that Lego came up with back in the 60s. And then homemaker pieces from the 70s. That was like sort of a doll theme too. And then that right next to a building in coral, which is one of Lego's newer colors. And that just happened to be, they had a bunch of coral pieces on the pick-a-brick wall, and I said, let's just make something out of those. So I sourced the pieces from all over.
And then how about the under the road layer here?
So the way my buildings work is that each vertical slice is connected and is kind of like one quote-unquote building. But I do try to do more detailing, more interior work on the bottom where people can kind of get down and see. I mean, if it was up to me and I had unlimited time and pieces, the whole thing would have an interior. But it's not really practical if I'm ever going to finish. But I do, especially when I'm starting a new building, I want to make those first few levels really unique. Try to have different types of businesses stacked up, like we have a temple and then a spice shop. And we have like a boat dock and a little cafe above that. I want it to be kind of random, just kind of not make sense. To be chaotic and organic, as if nobody planned for any of this stuff to turn out the way it did. People just made the most use of the limited space they had. That's sort of the idea that I'm going with.
Absolutely, and I think it turned out so awesome, and I love the extra detail lower down here where it's kind of easier to see, so that's really cool. And just the lighting effects are also really impressive with that, whether it's kind of like lantern type lighting or just mood lighting behind there.
Lighting's definitely key to, first of all, Cyberpunk in general, but New Hashima also. It's one of those things that Lego doesn't do a great job of themselves. They make these great sets, but where are the lights? So we have all taken it upon ourselves to do our different lighting, whether buying kind of pre-made kits or just building from scratch, so that we can have everything as lit up as possible. That's realistic too. Buildings have lights, streets have lights. I want to see that in a model that I make.
Now, before we go around to the other side of the buildings, I wanted to talk about the road here. So tell us about some of the details and kind of the way this came together.
So I always knew I wanted to have an elevated highway, but kind of one thing led to another, and I started getting interested in using addressable LEDs, which you can program to change the color, change the patterns that they make with something like an Arduino. I have an Arduino embedded in the road that's controlling it. And so it kind of became a lot more than I originally intended it to be, but it also gave me the confidence to do more elaborate lighting, and actually get into a little programming, and hopefully future projects will have a lot more motion, a lot more lighting, as I've kind of learned how I can do those different things. So I just wanted to have something, and it turned into kind of the centerpiece of the whole section, is having this big lit up highway. It definitely catches a lot of eyes, and I think it's I don't know if they would really have lit up roads in the future, but I thought it was interesting.
It's a fun idea. Well, we'll keep making our way around here then. So I know we kind of talked about one of the buildings on the end, if you want to talk about kind of the other side here.
So this dark green building here is another one of the original ones. This one actually had kind of a extensive reconstruction in the last couple of years, just due to it getting smashed up in transit, because I didn't build it very well the first time. But that gave me an opportunity to actually test out some of what I learned from building the highway. So now there are a whole bunch of addressable LEDs embedded in this that they run mostly kind of slow programs, but you'll see lights will randomly come on and off every so often. There are a few flashing lights like on top of the antenna at the top, and one in the back alley, and there's a lighting program in that little doctor's office in the corner. And that, that's what I want to do going forward. I think it's great. It's hard to build movement into something that has to come apart and go back together every time, but just having lights come on and off is kind of movement. It draws your eye. It makes it look different whenever you look at it. So that's something I want to do a lot more going forward. And so even though the exterior of this building really hasn't changed since 2012 when I built it, inside it's got new technology that hopefully will make my future builds more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And what can you tell us about some of the signage here that's kind of on the side of some of these buildings?
So some of those go back to 2012 as well. I wanted to come up with different kinds of lighting that I could use, and back then EL wire was an option that was out there and relatively inexpensive. So I kind of was, I guess you'd say, embroidering with it. That's kind of what it is. You fish it in and out of, you build a plate with a bunch of holes in it strategically, and then just fish the L wire in and out of it to make lines and curves and things like that. I have learned that L wire doesn't last forever. And it's not like we run this very often, but just sitting up for years at a time, the L wire kind of breaks down. I've had to replace the wire in both of those signs, and already again it's starting to kind of fade out. So in the future, I'd like to use more LED strips. They have these flexible LED strips now that are really bright and kind of achieve the same look. So any future signs like that probably won't be EL wire anymore.
Yeah, technology is advancing here in the city.
Technology is advancing. Also, EL wire, I don't know if it picks up on camera, but it makes the drivers make a high-pitched whine because they switch on and off at, I think, like 5,000 hertz or something like that. And some people can hear that. I can hear it, and it annoys the heck out of me.
What are some of the details on the lower portions here?
So here, this is sort of the part I like the best, actually. I've got a lot of interiors, built a walkway with, these are Scala oven racks. So it's just like an oven piece that had, an oven body, a door. These are actually the doors. And then the little racks, which came in exactly three colors. They came in very light gray, another color I wish there was more of, salmon, and then chrome silver of all things. So the chrome ones are pretty neat too. But then I've got, just as many businesses as I could think of. We've got a bar, a butcher. We've got a kind of a hardware shop, a place that sells questionable pills. We've got a Lawson convenience store. That's a real convenience store chain that's in Japan. And I thought it'd be fun to integrate something like that in there. We've got a kind of sketchy nightclub. We've got a fish shop on the water level. So any idea I have, I kind of go out and try to research it and see if I can find pictures of the sort of thing I'm thinking of, save a whole bunch of pictures and use that as inspiration to build the little details in later on. But I really like this whole stretch because I think this is where the most is going on in my section.
Yeah. One of the details throughout all of the buildings here that I think we see a little bit, we haven't pointed it out yet though, I love the sort of like laundry effect of just hanging the minifig parts out like that.
Yeah, that's something we don't think of too much in America, but in a lot of the world, people don't bother with clothes dryers. They prefer to just hang their laundry and not have the kind of extra appliance taking up space in a small apartment and, costing electricity and all that. So even people who have washing machines won't necessarily have a dryer, and it's common in places like Hong Kong, Japan, and a lot of places in the world really to see that. So you'll have these sometimes really modern and even futuristic looking buildings, but then you'll just see all this stuff hanging off of them, and I like that contrast a lot.
Yeah. Excellent work here. Really, really amazing buildings, and just the variety you were able to include in here is incredible. So thank you so much for all of your work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And we'll come back over here then to wrap up.
You know what's coming.
Yes.
Don't play. Nate, here we go. There you go, Josh.
Absolutely.
Nice. So yeah, another Neo Terminus, New Hashima in the books, right? We're happy to have shown you around the display. I'm super proud of all the builders who've come out and were dedicated to the like new standards that we put in place and really like rose to the challenge, right? And now let's drink some Mountain Dew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always end with Mountain Dew. There we go.
Hey.
Congratulations, everyone. Cheers.
Oh man, that's the good stuff. Josh, thanks so much as always. Until next time, okay?
Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.